SLT Mobitel, the connection. SLT Mobitel, the connection.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, port support. Cabinet spokesperson says West Terminal not a deal sweetener.
Two different areas. One is commercial, other one is pertaining to international relations.
Foreign Secretary, meanwhile, says Indian support is a given.
So if it is a global village, we are your immediate neighbor. But we are hopeful that India will be supporting, backing Sri Lanka fully in time to come.
Strong words. China's representative to the UNHRC calls report on Sri Lanka biased, politicised and a tool to interfere in nations' affairs. Resting place. The government announces newly identified location for COVID-19 burials. Action on inaction. The Archbishop of Colombo outlines measures on Easter report in action.
We still believe that our leaders will somehow respond to this.
All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Tuesday, the 2nd of March, 2021.
ඇල්කොහොල් අඩංගු hand sanitizer භාවිත කරන්න. ලෙඩ රෝග ඇති කරන විෂ බීජවලට එරෙහිව සටන් කරන්න. හඳුන්වා දීමේ මිල රුපියල් 350යි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammike Kanai. Now, the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner Michelle Bachelet's report on Sri Lanka has been slammed by China's representative yesterday, where he called it politicised, biased and a trespassing on her mandate. He also voiced concerns on the use of resolutions as instruments to pressurize sovereign nations and interfere in their internal affairs. Further, he added that the OHCHR does not have the right to include ideas such as preventive interventions and sanctions in the report.
At the informal consultations on the draft resolutions titled Promoting Reconciliation, Accountability and Human Rights in Sri Lanka, the representative of the People's Republic of China reiterated his government's opposition to what he termed the politicization and double standards on human rights issues. He also voiced the Chinese government's objections to country-specific resolutions or the instrumentalization of resolutions in order to pressurize and interfere in the internal affairs of a country. Further, he also expressed concerns over the resolution itself on the basis that it definitely trespasses on the mandate of the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights. He also points out that the Human Rights Commissioner has neglected the authority of the information provided by the respondent country, Sri Lanka, in the report. Further, concerns over terminology used in the report, such as preventive interventions and sanctions, were also raised on the basis that such ideas cannot be proposed by the OHCHR. On this basis, the Chinese representative labelled the UN Human Rights Commissioner's report as biased and politically driven. Meanwhile, when the informal consultations commenced today, the Chinese representative also objected to the use of the term extradite by the representative of the United States, adding that such terminology does not belong in the mandate of the Human Rights Council.
The government insists that involving Indian investment to develop the West Container Terminal at the Colombo port is not related to Sri Lanka seeking India's support at the United Nations Human Rights Council. Cabinet spokesperson Kehelia Rambukwala added that there exists a clear difference between Sri Lanka calling for India's support at the UNHRC and its involvement in developing the West Container Terminal. His words came during the cabinet media briefing worked off today.
The Cabinet of Ministers, which met yesterday, has given the go-ahead to develop the West Container Terminal of the Colombo South Port as a public-private limited company under build, operate and transfer basis for 35 years in collaboration with the Sri Lanka Ports Authority and nominees from India and Japan. Following a request by the Cabinet-appointed negotiating committee to nominate potential investors, the Indian High Commission has approved Adani Ports and Special Economic Zone Limited to develop the terminal. As per the agreement, India and Japan will be accorded 85% stakes of the terminal. Reportedly, the WCT will boast a 1,400-metre quay wall, a water depth of 20 metres, a terminal area of about 64 hectares, with an annual capacity of 2.6 million 20-foot equivalent units. Meanwhile, during today's cabinet media briefing, cabinet spokesperson Kehiriya Rambukwala was questioned on which grounds the government agreed to involve Indian investment to develop the West Container Terminal, given that it pulled out of a similar deal pertaining to the East Container Terminal following public backlash over attempts to sell national assets.
That MOC was signed and agreed by the former government and the ministers, but we were able to engage with diplomatic discussions with the relevant countries to do away with the East Terminal, and they agreed quite candidly, and then we were able to settle that issue. Policy statement of the government very clearly states the West Terminal that we will have a public-private partnership. If we need some foreign partners, that we will get the foreign partners involved in it. So we have made that offer on the basis of the previous agreement to the Japanese government as well as the Indian government, and there have been a response from the Indian government suggesting a particular company. The Japanese government has not yet suggested, so we will act in accordance with that agreement plus our policy statement.
Under the agreement, India and Japan will own 85% of the WCT, and as such, concerns were raised as to how it would be received by the trade unions and the clergy who opposed the original East Container Terminal deal, which would have seen India and Japan collectively own 49% stake.
Majority of the unions and the majority of the clergy said that instead of the East Terminal, West Terminal, which is a completely new thing, and there has to be a huge investment, and that investment, there are no returns has been envisaged as yet. But the East Terminal, the issue was that was a completed one and it was ready for business, and that was the idea, and there was a very small investment in so far as in comparison with the West Terminal. So the objections were more onto the East Terminal and not to the West Terminal.
Cabinet spokesperson Rambukwala was asked to place on record whether WCT negotiations are taking place in lieu of the East Container Terminal talks.
No, in keeping with the agreement entered in 2017 and the MOC entered in 2019, we have an obligation. In keeping with that agreement, we invited both parties that was involved in the agreement. That is the Japanese government and the Indian government. There was response from the Indian government. We haven't got any response from the Japanese government yet.
The cabinet spokesperson also addressed speculations of a link between the WCT deal and Sri Lanka seeking India's support at the United Nations Human Rights Council sessions in Geneva.
I think two different areas. One is highway commercial aspect of it. The other one is pertaining to international relations. With regard to the Human Rights Commission's affair, I think India would stand with the right group and they'll take the correct measures to support us, and that's our belief. We have forwarded correct picture of what has happened. In 2015, it was very unfortunate that then the foreign minister went and made a pledge that our forces got engaged with criminal activities. So we are undoing all that. We are very thankful to a lot of countries who have absolutely realized the bitter truth of the entire thing. They completely conveniently forgot about the activities of the LTT, how Jaffna people suffered. The general public in Jaffna are quite aware of the benefits that they reap in the absence of terrorism. We keep on fighting for what we have stated. We feel that some other countries who are supporting LTT and the diaspora is for the various political compulsions, and nothing more than that. But I'm sure the people are beginning to realize the facts of the case, and they are going to be supportive of us. And particularly the Indian case, in fact, they have never mentioned about a jetty. They have just mentioned about the 13th Amendment, which they initiated in 1996. So they will stand with that. But I don't think they will take up these commercial issues when it comes to international relations.
Pay just 500,000 rupees to reserve your unit today. Mulberry Residence.
Sri Lanka's best health insurance with the fastest claim settlement. Soft Logic Life.
Now, with a resolution against the country tipped to be moved at the United Nations Human Rights Council next Tuesday, Foreign Secretary Admiral Professor Jayanath Kolambage says that he expects India to stand up for Sri Lanka given the position the country occupies in India's vision of a global village. He adds that India has voiced objections to country-specific resolutions, and special rapporteurs are judging the human rights situation of countries, and revealed that it plans to move a resolution against this. With 21 countries having spoken against the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner's report last week, The Foreign Secretary stated that despite this, Sri Lanka can expect Western countries to cajole, threaten and use incentives to gain the voting bloc they require.
Foreign Secretary Admiral Professor Jayanath Columbage spoke to an Indian media outlet yesterday, but the main subject of discussion was the imminent resolution expected to be moved at the United Nations Human Rights Council next week against Sri Lanka and expectations of Indian support for the island.
When the High Commissioner's report was tabled on the 25th of February, 21 countries spoke on behalf of Sri Lanka as against to 15 countries who spoke for the High Commissioner's report. We are very overwhelmed by the response that we receive across the board. But then let me tell you one thing. If you look at these 21 countries that spoke on behalf of Sri Lanka, none of them are from the West. And if you look at the 15 countries that spoke against Sri Lanka, except one, all are the Western Bloc countries. So here, what we experience is a clear divide between the political North and the political South. Of course, it doesn't mean that the voting will be the same. Powerful countries can get together, they can canvass votes and they can threaten, they can use various methods to give incentives. That is what we have seen in this Human Rights Council also. It is not a vote based on the conscience of the country, conscious of the facts, conscious of the law, but it is the bloc. So in that sense, out of 47 countries, if we analyze the past pattern, getting 24 votes for a small country like Sri Lanka is practically difficult. But the divide will be clearly seen, as we have seen in the report. Unfortunately, India did not speak in favor of Sri Lanka at that time. Of course, I would refer to the Indian Foreign Minister's presentation he made, and he talked about a global village. So if it is a global village, we are your immediate neighbor. And I think India's point is that they are against country-specific resolution. They are against that these so-called rapporteurs being appointed to judge human rights situations in other countries. So I think India is even moving a resolution in that regard. But we are hopeful that India will be backing Sri Lanka fully in time to come.
Meanwhile, responding to questions on supposed Chinese inroads in Sri Lanka, the Foreign Secretary says that sovereign countries cannot be denied the freedom to choose their paths towards development.
You talk about inroads. A country like Sri Lanka should have choices to choose. If we don't have choices, what do you expect us to do? Can India look after everything in Sri Lanka? Can India take the burden of developing Sri Lanka alone? The answer is no.
In the meantime, touching on the issue of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, the Foreign Secretary stated that Sri Lanka is too small to be divided up into an Indian-style federal system.
The provincial councils have come in as a result of the 13th Amendment. Power has been devolved to all provinces in a substantial manner. I don't think we can really have 9 different federal states in this small country of 65,000 square kilometers.
Now then, the Technical Committee of the Ministry of Health has identified the island of Iranathu as a suitable location for the burial of COVID-19 deceased. This was revealed by Cabinet spokesperson Kehliya Rambukwala today. Now, he added, that the decision of the Technical Committee has not been subjected to any political interference. Meanwhile, Senior Professor of Geology at the University of AdaDerana, Atula Senaratne, says that the most suitable soil conditions for COVID-19 burials remains clay conditions in dry zone areas.
The government announced today that a section of the island of Iranathu has been identified to bury the remains of COVID-19 deceased, putting an end to several days of delay in confirming a location for the purpose. The relevant gazette pertaining to the decision to bury COVID-19 dead was issued on the 25th of last month. Addressing the Cabinet media briefing today, Cabinet spokesperson Kehliya Rambukwala said that the burial location was decided by the Technical Committee of the Health Ministry and it had no input from political elements. He added that the specific processes pertaining to the burial procedures will be informed by the health authorities to the relevant parties during the day. In the meantime, Senior and Chair Professor of Geology at the University of AdaDerana, Atula Senaratne, says that out of the 4 existing conditions of soil, the most suitable for burial of the COVID-19 deceased is dry zone clay. But with the Iranathu island being of dry zone sandy soil, he said that too is okay for the purpose, providing there aren't any settlements nearby.
When a body is buried, whether it is COVID infested or not, when it is decomposing, all those liquids generated by the decomposition is added to the soil. The soil is usually two kinds. It is one saturated and unsaturated. The unsaturated soil is at the top and the saturated soil is at the bottom, above the rock. So the water table is in the saturated soil. So if there is decomposing on top of that, all those liquids penetrating through the soil, adding into the water table. So that is usually what happens when something is buried. Now there are some places suggested earlier and we were asked to do a water table testing and we did it and we found the water table is about 2.5 meters below the ground and which are not suitable for burial of infested bodies. Our suggestion is to look for places where there is no water table if possible or water table at a very far below depth from the surface of the ground. Now there are 4 different types of hydrogeological conditions you may find in Sri Lanka. One is in the wet zone in sandy soil. The second one, wet zone, clay soil. The third one is dry zone sandy soil and dry zone clay soil. So out of these 4, the best place for burial of an infested body would be the dry zone clay soil. You can find many places in Sri Lanka there is no water table at all. For that you need the help of a geologist to identify the right place. With all due respect to the health professionals, those who are in the forefront of the anti-COVID operations, we are ready to help. Because without our knowledge, without our contribution on the hydrogeological conditions of those locations, it is difficult to take decisions with the suitability of the ground.
In the meantime, Sri Lanka's COVID-19 recoveries passed the 80,000 mark today, leaving the number of active cases under 3,500. Close to 50,000 people have been inoculated against the virus within the Colombo municipality alone, with the CMC health officials targeting to administer 130,000 jabs. In the meantime, health authorities also repelled some media reports which say that the government is looking at incorporating the single-shot vaccine in its inoculation drive.
The recently observed declining trend in daily COVID-19 cases in Sri Lanka continues, with just 310 infections being confirmed in the island yesterday. 303 of them are local transmissions, while 7 are imported cases involving Sri Lankan expatriates. The local cases include 60 from Colombo, 40 from Gampaha, 34 from Ratnapura, 24 from Jaffna, 19 infections each from Norelia and Galle, 18 from Kegol, 17 from Matale and 13 from Ampara. A further 59 infections were detected from the remaining 13 districts. Meanwhile, the caseload for the day so far stands at 153. On the vaccination front, 42,925 people were immunized against the novel coronavirus yesterday, taking the number of people immunized past 500,000. In the meantime, members of low-income earning families in the Colombo municipality were immunized at the vaccination center located in Narahempeta today.
So far, we have immunized 44,025 people, and of course we are aiming at 130,000. And also there are certain number of doses are expected from the World Health Organization specifically to be given to people who are 60 and above. So we are going to have a special program starting from week after for these senior citizens. Those who have not received their inoculation so far will be subjected to that. And with this, we expect that we will be able to control the COVID-19 spread within the city of Colombo, and we can really bring this deadly disease under control.
Meanwhile, speaking during a program on AdaDerana, President of the Public Health Inspectors Union, Upul Rohana, said there have been several instances where members of the Colombo Municipal Council have influenced the vaccination program within the council's jurisdiction. He, however, stressed that there was no involvement of any parliamentarian in the undue influence. In recent days, there were media reports saying that the government is considering the use of the single-shot vaccine in its national inoculation program. When First at 9 contacted Deputy Director General of Public Health Services Dr. Hemanta Herath, he, however, refuted it, saying that there is no such matter under consideration. In the meantime, the total number of COVID-19 infected persons who recovered from the virus in Sri Lanka has now passed 80,000. With 598 recoveries being confirmed today, the figure is at 80,020.
Within the last minutes, a further 164 COVID-19 cases have been confirmed in the island, taking the overall figure for the day to 317. We'll see you shortly after the break. Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, the Attorney General has received 65 volumes of the proceedings of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry, which probed the Easter Sunday terror attacks from the Presidential Secretariat today. Coordinating Officer of the Attorney General, State Counsel Nisha Rajaratne said that 22 volumes have not been handed over due to the sensitive nature of evidence pertaining to national security. Volume 1 of the report was handed over to the Attorney General on the 25th of February. However, the Attorney General had requested the President's Secretary to submit all proceedings, documents and materials of the Commission to the Attorney General's Department. Meanwhile, the Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith, announced today that any further failure to deliver justice by the second anniversary of the Easter Sunday terror attacks in April will lead to an island-wide protest by the country's Catholics. The Archbishop called a media briefing today where he outlined the Easter Commission report's failure to stick to its mandate and uncover the hidden figures behind the deadly attacks in 2019.
The Archdiocese of Colombo has decided to declare the 7th of March as Black Sunday, citing lack of justice for victims of the 2019 Easter Sunday attacks. Churches across the island have been notified to attend Holy Mass clad in black and to engage in a silent protest demanding justice for the Easter attack victims after Sunday services. Accordingly, a media briefing was convened by the Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith, today.
The Easter Sunday Commission report has been handed over to us yesterday, but we have many question marks about this report because the most important requirement of the Commission has not been fulfilled. The Gazette notice establishing the Commission in its clause number 3 mentions very clearly that the Commission has been established to find out who placed the bombs, who funded it and who supported it, and also who tried to interfere in the investigation process to try to protect some of their stooges and friends. All of these facts must come out, but they appear to have not been made public in a proper sense. So we have question marks, and we want the government to make use of whatever has been found by the Commission, in addition to whatever has been found by the CID, the TID and the SIS, and do a thorough investigation into who placed the bombs, who funded it, and who helped and encouraged these people, and why did they do that? We want the government to take more action, more concrete action on this matter, and to give us this information as soon as possible. We want to also stress that if there is no concrete action with regard to finding the answers for those questions, with a concerted effort on the part of the government to establish a structure that will clearly go in for that to answer those questions, then we will be forced to call upon the entire nation to protest on the 21st of April, the second anniversary of this bomb attack, to protest and to join us all in solidarity in order to demand the government to establish such a investigation, a thorough investigation into the people who are responsible.
The Cardinal was questioned about seeking international assistance if Sri Lanka fails to bring the perpetrators of the 2019 Easter bombings to justice.
Well, already some people are in correspondence with us about the situation, so we keep them briefed about what is happening, but we have not asked them to take it up at that level because we still believe that this is an internal question within our country, that we can solve this, that our leaders will somehow respond to this.
We will see you shortly. Stay with us.
නිවසේ මෙවැනි මතු පිට රැඳෙන විස බීජ 99.9%ක්ම විනාශ කරන Vim Cleaners.
Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa says that just as the building of schools can lead to the closure of prisons, promoting a healthier lifestyle through constructing sports ground can prevent the need to build more hospitals. The Premier made this comment during the launch of the national program themed Gamata Pitiyak, designed to develop the country's sports infrastructure.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa today inaugurated the Gamata Pitiyak national program designed to develop sports infrastructure in order to inculcate a new sports culture in the country. Coming to life on a concept of Sports Minister Namal Rajapaksa, the national program will develop 332 sports grounds across the island. The virtual inauguration ceremony was held at Temple Trees this morning, and parallel to the ceremony, renovation work of several stadiums also commenced. Speaking there, the Premier said that the youth is often accused of being selfish, insensitive and addicted to their mobile phones. He, however, says that instead of indulging in the blame game, reasons for such behavioral patterns should be looked into. Recalling that children had the luxury of vast home gardens to play their heart's content in the past, the PM noted that urbanizations had put an end to that luxury. The Premier believes that just as the opening of a school paves way for the closure of a prison, a sports ground would take the need to build a hospital away. Meanwhile, with the objective of creating a younger generation with professional skills, State Ministry of Skills Development, Vocational Education, Research and Innovation today launched Skills Sri Lanka, a program designed for this purpose. The program was launched under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa at the BMICH in Colombo. The ceremony saw the participation of a number of ministers, including State Minister for Skills Development Sita Arambipala. President Gotabaya granted scholarships to a number of selected students during the event.
A woman caught on a mobile phone video caning an 8-month-old infant has been arrested by police and the National Child Protection Authority today. Police investigations, however, have revealed that the woman had been suffering from mental stress for some time. Now, it was revealed that the decapitated body of a young woman found inside a suitcase yesterday while being abandoned at Dam Street in Petta had been transported from Hangwella to Colombo by bus. The suspect bringing the suitcase to the location where it was later found was caught on nearby CCTV. Further investigations have found CCTV footage showing the same person boarding the bus and then getting off at Petta. The relevant private bus has been identified during investigations. Its driver and conductor have told the police that they do recall an individual carrying a suitcase boarding their bus from Hangwella. Though the post-mortem examination was due to be conducted today, it did not happen since the body is missing the head. As such, the police are yet to establish the identity of the deceased. Police say that the victim is a woman approximately 20 years of age. They are now seeking public assistance in identifying the deceased woman as well as the suspect caught on CCTV. As such, the general public is requested to relay any information on the incident or the persons involved either by or in the incident, by contacting the officer in charge of the Dam Street Police on 071 859 1557 or by contacting the Police Emergency Response Unit on 0112 433 333. Now, taking a look at the Colombo Bourse, the all-share price index fell 94.75 points to end at 7,343.38, while the S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks ended at 2,909.77 after losing 54.53 points. The market turnover was at 1.9 billion rupees. Now, here's Achyutan Srirangan with a brief report on today's market performance.
Stock market continued for the downfall for the second consecutive session, while they continue in the Tuesday trend being the red for a fifth consecutive week. And market experienced a downtrend within the first half of the session, and during the midday market rebound and recording a short-lived uptrend and closed at 7,343, losing 95 points. And banking sector took over the dominance of the turnover with contributing a 42% of the today turnover, and parcel trade in Sampath Bank, HNB and Lion Breweries and Royal Ceramic boosted the turnover for the session, amounting 32% of the today turnover. Market experienced a net outflow while recording a moderate participation.
In the meantime, the rupee closed weaker at 196 rupees and 50 cents to 197 rupees and 50 cents to the US dollar today. However, the rupee last closed at 195 rupees and 50 cents to 196 rupees yesterday. Now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.